Hello, Shabbat Shalom, happy July, happy Canada Day. I would like to share some thoughts about the Parsha with you today as we head into Shabbat. There's a very famous line of liturgy that comes out of this week's Torah portion. The portion is a double here, it's Chukkat-Balak, and from Balak we get that very famous line of liturgy, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, mishkanotecha Yisrael. How lovely are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. We say this whenever we begin our prayer service in the morning as a nod to the sanctity of our sanctuary or wherever we find ourselves praying. And the commentators always puzzled what was so beautiful about these tents that it became noteworthy in this way. And the answer that the traditional rabbis give is that what was special and beautiful about the tents and praiseworthy is that the entrances of the tents were not aligned with each other. No door was facing another door so that people weren't able to look into each other's homes. And this was seen as an incredible act of modesty, of snute, of respecting each other's modesty. And so I want to talk for a minute about the concept of modesty. As we head into the summer, we're in the summer and it's hot and we're wearing less and less coverage with clothing. It's worth thinking about what modesty means in a modern context. In the old school way of thinking about snute, of modesty in Judaism, most of the discussion is about women's clothing, about the neckline and the length of a skirt and the opacity of your stockings. I hope that most of us can agree that this is a little bit of an outdated model. Not all of modesty needs to be a concept that's borne by women, and that's a responsibility of women. We have some, in the conservative movement, some more modern shuvot, one of which was written by a friend of mine, Rabbi Konigsberg, and some other colleagues, which speaks to not only the fact that modesty, the concept of modesty is context dependent, right? What's modest in shul is not the same thing as what's modest at the beach, that the context matters when you're deciding what modesty is. But it also talks about the fact that modesty is a dynamic. Modesty exists in the space between what one person is wearing and what another person observes about them. There's the observed, the person who's wearing the clothing, and the person doing the observing, the person that's watching them and reacting however they react. Now, obviously, the old school model, the outdated model, is quite heteronormative with the focus on women's bodies and men's looking at women. And, you know, in our modern world, we know that this is not necessarily an appropriate way to understand the dynamic between women and men, especially in situations that become serious. For example, you know, if a woman is sexually assaulted by a man, we don't ask anymore, well, I wonder what she was wearing. Maybe she was asking for it, right? We don't say that anymore. And I think we have to take the same kind of a move with the idea of snute, that everyone is responsible for its snute, obviously in a non-heteronormative setting where anyone can have sexual feelings towards anyone else. All of us are responsible for this, not just women. Anybody who wears clothing at all should be aware of and thinking about what someone else might see. And anyone who's observing another person is responsible for their own thoughts. That's the point, that there's a dynamic between observer and observed, and both are part of the concept of snute. And I actually think that that's beautiful. This mitzvah, this important concept that garners so much praise from the Torah, requires other people. This is not a mitzvah that a person can do by themselves. We need each other. We require each other in order to carry out this mitzvah. This is the genius of Judaism, I think, that community is such a central and important part of all that we do. We need each other in order to do what is right and what is good and to perform mitzvot. We recognize this obviously in a pandemic where the public health of each of us relies on the health of everyone else and on the willingness of everyone else to take care of each other and to do what needs to be done privately so that all of us can stay safe. This is also something that comes to mind now as we all are fighting for more racial justice in the world. It's not just the role of the victims of racial injustice to fight for racial justice. All of us are responsible for that as well. And as broadly as one can even think, that whenever one can help another person, one should help. If there's an opportunity to help, you should take that opportunity. All of us can do things for each other that make life better and that lighten someone else's burden if we're able to. And so as we head into Shabbat and we think about how as a community we need each other, we support each other, we require each other to perform different mitzvot, let's consider the blessing of what it means to have a beautiful home. Not only a home that supports snute and privacy, but a home that receives blessing, a home that is holy, a home that even while we're in our homes alone for the most part, we still need each other as a community for all sorts of things to keep us safe and to keep us well. And within that interconnectedness of community, even while we're alone, I hope that it helps all of us feel a little bit more holiness in our lives. So Shabbat Shalom. Have a wonderful weekend.